always say when you're relatable, it's because you're real. Transparency will always lead to your transformation. Transparency will always lead to other people's transformation.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the 1%er podcast. We got a great episode for you. Sam and I are definitely excited to have this guy. You've definitely seen his videos out there. He was a former NFL player, author of The Greatest to You and Straight Up. Go check out his podcast, Straight Up, as well, guys. But he's an incredible social media motivational speaker. Millions of followers around the world, guys. Please help me welcome Trent Shelton. Thanks so much, Trent, for being on the show.
What up, fellas, man? Thanks for having me, man. Thanks for sharing your platform. It means a lot to me. How you guys doing?
We're good, man. We're good.
We've been looking forward to this, huh?
Yeah, we've been looking forward to this for a long time, man. So why don't we just get right into it, man? Let's talk about some of your story, some of your backstory, kind of going through football, going through Baylor, and eventually getting into the NFL.
For sure, man. So, just to start off at the beginning, football was my life. Not just football, every sport. Baseball, basketball, track. It was my identity. It was my everything. And for so many people, they might not can relate to that, but I always tell people, just think about something that was your dream to the fullest. And ever since I was 5, that's all that I knew was my identity. And so kind of fast forward a little bit, I ended up being a great athlete, and I give it to my brothers. I have 2 older brothers, so they were always like double teaming on me. So I had to step up to the plate. Got a chance to go to Baylor. We moved to Texas from Louisiana, and Texas is huge when it comes to sports. It's especially football. And so I turned it up a notch, and I was blessed enough to get a scholarship to Baylor University. There, had a great career. Thought I was going to get drafted. Didn't happen, and that was kind of the first shock to my confidence, man, because that was the first hiccup in this road that made me be dang, things aren't going the way I want them to go. I got picked up as an undrafted free agent to the Colts the year after I won the Super Bowl. So it was cool to walk in with Peyton Manning, Reggie Wayne, Marvin Harrison, Coach Dungy, all these people, Bob Sanders. And my first rookie preseason went well. It was one of the tops in the league. I thought I was going to be a slot to make the team. They ended up basically putting me on practice squad, wanted to develop me more. I had a first-round pick in front of me and a third-round pick in front of me, so it was hard, to really break through. And kind of just to fast forward through my story, man, my whole NFL career was a lot of getting signed and released, practice squads, living in different cities. I felt like I was doing everything right, but it wasn't working out for some reason. And I started to get depressed, man. I started to hit rock bottom. I started to stay inside when I came home, in September. I was I can't go outside because people are going to ask me why I'm here. So I started to really I started to run from my reality and not address my feelings. And that dug me into a rock bottom, man, that eventually led to what I do today.
Awesome. Wow. You kind of lost your identity when, the football dream was gone, didn't you? And I'm
Absolutely.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I would say absolutely. That was my life. So it was always Trent, the football player, Trent, my friend that plays at Baylor, Trent that plays for the Colts, or my brother or my son. And my parents and family love me for more than sports, but that's what I wrap my significance around. So if I lost that, who would I be? You know what I'm saying? Even from a self place, it's all I ever did. So what else can I do in my life? I never worked a 9 to 5. I, wasn't into anything else. This was my whole entire life. So yeah, that was my complete identity.
Yeah. I can't imagine that when you come home in some of those periods where you're on and off, the people start saying, oh, Trent's back in town, stuff like that. I'm sure, man, you felt that embarrassment and that shame. How was getting through that process?
Yes.
It was hard, man, because you're right. Some people were probably genuinely surprised, but some people, it's in the paper, they see the ticker. And so some people knew why I was there and was kind of aha, you didn't make it type of thing. And I knew at the end of the day, though, I had a choice. I can either run from my reality or face it. I could sink or I can swim. I could let the prison of people's opinions and judgments control me for the rest of my life and allow it to eat me up inside. Or I could say, you know what? Yeah, this happened, but this is just a chapter of my life. It's not my whole story. And so many people, when they lose something that means everything to them, whether it's a relationship, a sport, a job, they end up saying their life is over. And I was in that place because I didn't think that there was any more, better, as I like to say, to my life or anything else I could do. So it was hard, man. And sometimes it was from friends. And I was like, man, I'm a failure. And I started to talk to myself in that way. I'm a failure. I'm a loser. My life is over. And I started to live that way.
Can you tell us how long of a process this was? Let's just say, okay, you didn't make it to NFL, you come back home. Did you, have were you depressed for a day or two and it's okay, I can get back up? Or was it like, all right, man, you fell through depression for a few months. Tell me what kind of like how you felt and the timeline. Because a lot of people go through, the ups and downs and they get punched in the face. Maybe somebody's watching this right now and they're in that, downward spiral. And they're like, okay, how long did it take you to realize, man, I got to get back up, I got to do something?
Yeah, man, it was a few years, man. So kind of break down the timeline. 2008 was my lowest year. I felt like a rock bottom. And it's funny, I told a story about me being in Seattle a few weeks ago, and I stayed in a hotel where my old apartment was connected to Lake Washington. I felt like, my life was done. And so 2009, I remember being in my room at my parents' house and just looking around and asking myself, like, is this going to be it? And Tristan, my son, he was a few months old at the time. And I say, is this going to be the end of my life? And I had to make a choice in that moment. That choice, and I break this down in my rehab process. It's 3 R's, but the first R is reality. And that choice was like, okay, it happened. So accept it. And a lot of people, they're afraid to accept what has happened in their life. Acceptance is freedom. And so once I accepted it and said, this is over, this is done, then it gave me permission to be able to grow from it. And Tristan, my son, was my catalyst. I mean, I knew that he was going to follow my footsteps, and I didn't want to leave a path of depression. I didn't want to leave a path of, sympathy. I wanted to show him, like, yeah, your dad lost this, but your dad was able to grow and fight from it, and your dad is not a quitter. And so Tristan was my why. If it wasn't for him, I could definitely say I would have probably either not be here or be in a very dark spot with my life.
I saw that coming as soon as you said Tristan, my son, was a few months old, and you were going out. Like, when you have kids, you can't be depressed. You got to set that example. You got to get up, and being depressed is almost like a selfish thing to do, and you got to, set that example, lead by example, and cheer yourself back up and get yourself back up. So I commend you for that. So you said about the 3 R's. So I would love, go on. That's great. What's the next one?
For sure. So the 3 R part in the rehab process, and just to break down rehab, my definition of rehab is putting strength back into a weakness. So I always say we all have things in our life that we can rehab. And it came from, not from a standpoint of like addiction necessarily, but it came from a standpoint of like physical therapy. Because I remember when I would get injured, I would go to rehab, and rehab sucked. Because, you want to get back on the field, you want to get back in the game. And sometimes when you do it too early, you get more injured. So it taught patience, it taught a process. And if you do it right, a lot of times you come back stronger than you were before you got hurt. So I said, let me take this to life, mind, body, and soul, right? And so rehab stands for renewing every heart and body. It means putting strength back into a weakness. So I said, okay, what are the 3 pillars that I need to change? And I said, mind, body, and soul, right? I want to be the strongest I can mentally, physically, spiritually. I was like, okay, what does that process look like? So the first is reality. And the quote that I love to put with that is, you'll never win your war by running from your battles, just period. You'll never fix what you're not willing to face. And most people don't face it. The second R is release. People say don't burn bridges. I agree to an extent. I feel like you shouldn't burn bridges for minor things or for misunderstandings, but there's certain bridges you need to burn in your life because there's certain things your life cannot afford to go back to, whether that's a circle, whether that's your habits, whether that's your mindset. And so there were things in my life that I knew I had to let go of in order to receive the things meant for my life. And the third R is repair, right? The repair process. Once you get everything out, it doesn't stop there. You now have to build yourself back up, right? With the right habits, the right principles, the right values. And the thing about repair is a lot of people try to repair their life at a surface level, right? The easy repair. But I've learned this in my life multiple times. If you don't get down to the root issues, which could be years of why you think the way you think, years of your process, what was influenced to you, what was given to you, the problem will always find its way back to the surface. And so I ask myself the magic question all the time of why. Like, why do I react like this? Where did this come from? Is this something from my childhood? Is it something from an old relationship? And that's the process, and then repeat, because I'm in rehab every single day, right? It's not like a one and done thing. I'm always trying to better myself. And these are just the processes that I go through to make the changes in my life.
I love that, man. And I want to highlight what you just said is you can't win your war if you run from your battles.
Yeah.
And, that's such a key thing, especially right now, because I feel like a lot of people are just just don't want to look back, and they don't want to admit the failures, or they don't want to admit that they even were disappointed that something didn't work out. A lot of people if they didn't get that football career that they wanted, I didn't want it anyways, or they'd kind of deflect.
Yeah.
So that's something, but you can't move on until you face, and like you say, until you face that reality, man. So I love that.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to ask, it kind of goes in line with that, is in your football career, you know, why were you never the guy who was like, the coach screwed me over, you know, like I should have been, or an injury, you kind of like play it off. Why were you never that guy?
Because even if there's truth in that, I call it the BC mindset, blame and complain. As long as you're pointing the finger out, even if it's truth, how does that help you move forward?
That's so
How does putting the responsibility in someone else's hands of your life help you move forward? And so for me, even if that was true, it didn't make sense to me. I said, okay, well, what can I do better? Or how can I use this situation to better my life? And I call it the AC mindset, accept and change. And that's why, man, because I knew crying about it, I knew complaining about it, blaming other people would do absolutely nothing for my life except make me feel good about staying stagnant. And I didn't want that. So I always look in the mirror. I mean, my 5 words of rehab time is it all starts with you. I look in my mirror, I look in the mirror and say, Trent, it all starts with you. Take the responsibility. Even if somebody hurt you, did you wrong, take the responsibility, because then you take the power from that situation and place it back in your hands.
Yeah. I mean, that's a maturity thing, man. Is, you know, I'm around Sam, around the guys here, and I don't get a lot of that. But I've been like seeing a little bit of that mindset, and where people don't have that, and they just kind of like live every day, and they don't have that intentional drive to get better, to own their mistakes. And so it's a completely night and day shift. Why do you think that there's some people who want to get better and want to get motivated, and there's just others just who are fine with where they're at, and they're fine denying, not taking responsibility?
Yeah. So, you know, that's a deep question, because I mean, there could be a lot of, you know, root issues there. Like for some person, it might just be, you know, their environment that they're in. Like some people, you know, they don't have the opportunity. They don't know any better. You know, they don't know about certain things just because what they're raised around or what they see every single day and how they're influenced. Some people are addicted to comfort, right? Even though they know that. I use this analogy. So I just moved into a new house, and this new house is, you know, a lot better place. It's kind of the dream house for my family. But I'll be honest with you, like it was a point in this process of moving on to this house where I was like, man, excuse me, I'm gonna let this go by. I'm like, man, I don't want to do this. I gotta pack. I gotta do all these things. I became frustrated, and because I thought about the hard work, and it made me realize, like, even though I knew the process would be beautiful, I knew the process of moving would suck. And I think a lot of people get so caught up in the process of being hard, get so caught up in the process of, you know, sucking, for better lack of words, and they're so into instant gratification that they don't have patience, right? I like to call it the gardener's mindset. They don't have patience in knowing that the seed that I plant today, if I water it, do the right things, eventually it will pay off. So I think that's a part of it. People are just afraid of the hard work and the consistency and the discipline it takes to be able to change. And for other people that really want to do it, I think it comes down to a why, a reason. You know, you look at anybody that's legendary, anybody that's making change, anybody that's better in their life, their family life, or started a business, a company, it's usually because they had a strong commitment and a strong why. And my why was one of my best friends committed suicide. So it was my promise to him that I would live the rest of my life helping people with their self-worth. And so even when I want to quit and give up, I can't. And so I'm always trying to find ways better to engage and communicate with people. So to make a long story short, it's your why and your reason. When your reason is strong enough, no struggle will ever be great enough.
I love it. The gardener mindset, you know, the AC mentality and the BA mentality. That's amazing. I mean, I'm just taking notes in my mind. I mean, this is great.
I was listening to that story. You all good, man? All right, awesome. I was listening to that story that you were telling about you planting that seed with your grandfather, and how you kept going back and, hey, is it growing?
Yeah.
Growing yet? And it's cool, man, because like you can't see what's going on under the soil. You know, they always give you the analogy of if you hit an axe, or an oak tree, and you're trying to chop it down, you can see the progress. You can see I'm getting close. I'm like making damage on this tree. But what's going on underneath the soil, you can't see it at all. And I think that life and like business and all that stuff is such a parallel to that, because a lot of the times you're putting in that work and you don't see the payoff, you know, especially with this guy. He was doing that for years and he didn't see the payoff. And so,
Yeah.
you know, what do you, other than your why and stuff like that, what do you do to get through those times?
Yeah. So outside of my why, I always focus on the future me. Like I'm so afraid of regret. Like I'm so afraid of like I wish I would have. Like seriously. I even do a thing where, I don't know if you saw the video, like I go to the cemetery at times just to refresh when I need that hunger to remind myself that my life is going to be over at some point, hopefully years down the line. I don't want to come to that place incomplete. I don't want to come to that place with things I wish I would have done. You know, I'm around people who are sick and elderly and, you know, things have changed. I don't want to get to that place like, dang, I wish I would have done more. And so, of course, in a healthy way, I'm always focusing on and having that conversation with the 90-year-old Trent. And like the 90-year-old Trent says, like, hey, this is the greatest version of you. If you want to get here, these are the things that you have to do, right? You have to be committed. You have to have habits. You have to have discipline. You have to have a routine. You have to, you know, master even your emotions, right? With emotional intelligence, you have to do these things. I know it sucks, but if you want to get here to a place where you look back and you have a legacy, you leave some here, even when you leave this earth, these are the things that you must do. And so that's always the catalyst that gets me moving forward when sometimes I don't want to move.
I love it, man. I love it. One thing, I was listening to your interview with Ed Milet, and I've never heard this, man, is you said that people can't see your greatness because they're too close to you.
Yeah.
I've always heard, like, you know, you might be starting out, you don't have a track record of success. You haven't proven yourself. You don't have results. But when you said it like that, I was like, that was an epiphany. Yeah. And then when you said after that, and he's like, a lot of the times it says more about them because they don't think greatness can be that close to them.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man, it's so simple, but it's huge. And that was like, dude, I see that. And I felt that, man. And like, that broke so many things down for me, man. And I loved that. But I want to ask you is like, you have so many of those quotes that just hit you. And, you know, this is one thing I first heard about you at Thrive last year. You know, you came at Thrive and you
Okay, yeah.
And I was excited to hear E.T. I was excited to hear Andy Frisella, but I didn't know who you were. And then you got up and then I was like, who is this guy? Yeah. Like something about it genuinely was like, oh my gosh, like it was just piercing me. And you're an incredible speaker, man. And that's something that I love. And I like want to be that speaker, man. And so I want to ask you, how do you develop that? How do you find your voice and how do you articulate that message in the way that you do?
Yeah, man. So, man, I could talk about this for an hour, but just to kind of get some tactical points, I think one, you have to, and this is a simple thing to say, but you have to be comfortable with who you are. You know, I always tell people, you know, we're human, so we're influenced a lot. Like we look out and we see other people and it's like, oh, okay, this is the way to be successful. But you're looking at their way of success. And obviously we can take bits and pieces and apply it to our own life. But one thing that I always said is that I know my greatest gift is my uniqueness, right? There's nobody created like you or like me. And when we own that, it gives us freedom and it gives us power. The second thing is for me, giving myself permission to not be perfect. You know, giving myself permission to not fail. Like as a speaker, when I first was starting out, I'm gonna be honest, like I would, you know, write down my notes and I want to say I do prepare, but it's just a different way. But I would write down my notes. I would want to be perfect. And I realized like one of my very first speeches in front of all these kids, I had all this perfect like script and speech prepared. I went on stage and I forgot it all. And I realized like, hey, this is my moment to just be vulnerable and transparent. Because one thing that I would tell you at the end of the day, when people know that you're real, I always say when you're relatable, it's because you're real. Transparency will always lead to your transformation. Transparency will always lead to other people's transformation. So when you give yourself permission to fail, you give yourself permission to mess up, you give yourself permission to not be perfect, then I think that's when you connect with people because then people are like, I can really relate to this. I can understand this. And that's the power of connection. You know, anybody can communicate, but when you connect with people, when you pierce their heart, that's when people actually create change. And so for me as a speaker, man, I'm always thinking about how can I connect with people in the most vulnerable and transparent way where they can take it, apply it to their life and actually change their life because application creates transformation. I don't want to say a bunch of good stuff and people can apply it.
Yeah, great. Now you have two books, you know, The Greatest You, you know, and your newest one is called Straight Up. You know, so tell me The Greatest You and Straight Up, what's the different content on it? What's the difference in these two books?
Absolutely, brother. So The Greatest You is the process I talked about, you know, the 3 R's. It's not outlined in there, but if you read through it, you'll see it. But The Greatest You is more of not necessarily my story, but bits of my story, other rehabber stories, who I call my community. But it's a process of things that I believe in, you know, whether it be protecting your peace, the championship mindset. And so I say that book is more for the people in interpersonal development, the people that are readers, the people that, you know, want to transform their life. And it's an easy read. Straight Up is exactly that. I mean, it's targeted to young adults. It's a very simple read. When I was writing it, I was like, man, I want to make sure that they feel, as I like to say, video Trent. So when you read that book, you're going to feel like, dang, I feel like I'm listening to a video. And it's very easy to apply certain things because, you know, I reached out on my Snapchat at the time. I was like, hey, how many of y'all read books? It was like 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 13-year-olds. They're like, none of us. Like, we don't want to read. And I said, well, what if I made it like super simple? You can pick it up in literally a day and read a lesson, learn it, apply it, move on. They're like, yeah, we would love that. And so I kept that in mind with creating it. And I thought about my childhood. I was like, man, I wish people would have been more straight up with me about certain things. Like told me exactly, not just don't do drugs. Why not? Right? Why don't you do it? Or don't have sex, but what could that actually lead to? You know, having kids before it's time to is very expensive. It can take away from your dreams, you know, all these things. So I want to be very straight up with kids to make sure they got the tools necessary to build their future.
I love it, man. I love it. Yeah. You know, I know the guy behind the camera, he's not a reader at all. And he read The Greatest You, and he was telling me, he's like, dude, that book was like the first personal development book that and it genuinely like felt that, you know, it was totally about that interpersonal development like you're talking about. So guys, I mean, if you haven't checked it out, we'll link it down below, but definitely go check them out. Both of them, great books. You heard it from Trent himself, but I want to ask you, man, is so many people, there's so much content out there nowadays. There's so much inspiration. There's so many motivational speakers. For the people who watch all that stuff, but still don't act, you know, still don't chase what they want, still have some reservations. What do you tell those people?
It's your life. You know, I say this every time I speak. I'm not here to change your life. I'm a seed planter. If you want to live the rest of your life in average, whatever that means to you, if you want to live the rest of your life unfulfilled, that's on you. And you have to understand, especially when you have, and listen, everybody's a leader. Like people think leadership is a position. No, leadership is action. Everybody's a leader. Somebody somewhere at some time is watching what you do. And so do you want to give a God-given life, right, just for you and just walk through this life, just walking through it? Or do you want to actually be alive and thrive? And so it's on you. If you want to die unfulfilled, be my guest. But don't live the rest of your life complaining about things you're not willing to change. All right, so the tools are there. The information is there. We live in a social media era where literally you can go to Google University and find out anything. So there's no more excuses not to better your life in the way that means to you. Because that's the thing. We often compare our lives and say, oh, my life is not adding up to this. I don't have this amount of followers. I don't have this amount of money. So I'm not progressing. No, your journey is your journey. And so if growth means, you know, waking up at 5 a.m. for you, and that's a check mark. If growth means, you know, writing in your journal every single day, that's a check mark. It's your journey. But as long as you're progressing, I promise you, you'll never be the same human being.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing I think that goes along with that is you talk about comparison. You know, and there's a healthy way to compare yourself, and I think there's a really negative way. How do you think that distinguishes?
Yeah, I mean, if you can compare yourself in a way of, I always say the greatest comparison is the old you versus the new you, right? I think that's your greatest comparison when you look in the mirror. But when you look out and you can say, okay, how can I apply this to my life? And I think it comes, you have to get to a place of mental maturity, as I like to call it, to not take it as lessening yourself. Because comparison will enroll you in to run a race that's not yours. It will cause you to live a life that is not yours, and you will always feel empty inside. So when it comes to healthy comparisons, for me, it's like, okay, that's what this person is doing. I've already made up my mind that their success has nothing to do with mine. Their life has nothing to do with mine. Their social media following has nothing to do with mine. But what they're doing, how can I compare my life and say, how can I make myself better? Oh, this person's a better speaker because he does this. Okay, how can I apply that to my life? And so I think it comes from a place of being secure with yourself first. And I don't think you can get to that healthy comparison if you're not secure. So you have to own yourself first, and then I feel like you get to that spot.
Okay. Now, I think a huge part of your journey has been your journey of self-awareness. You know, what did that look like for you? How did you kind of get from where you were to where you are now?
Yeah, man, it's just being real with yourself. Like, and being honest with yourself. And you got to give yourself grace. You know, I'm not saying to beat yourself up, but the greatest work you ever will do is the work you do on yourself. And so for me, it doesn't take other people telling me things, even though I respect it and I accept that. You know, I accept the constructive criticism, but I can look myself in the mirror and say, Trent, you're tripping. I can call myself out and say, you know what, you're being lazy. You know, even today, I didn't do my workout this morning, right? It bothered me more than I'm sure it bothered anybody else in the world. But those are things that I can check myself on. And I don't know if it's me, part of me being an athlete, just, you know, having to do that as far as be the best football player I can be. But I'm not afraid to check myself. I'm not afraid to call myself out because I know that I can still grow, right, when I'm honest with myself. And so you can't grow by lying to yourself or trying to, you know, make sure your perception to the world is perfect because you're so worried about perception, how people see you. I'm less worried about that. I'm more worried about what's real in my life and how I can actually make the changes. And then, you know, however people see me is however they see me.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. Now, I want to ask you, basically, you know, Sam says it a lot. You get what you tolerate, you know, and that goes in line with your standard.
Yeah.
You know, how do you raise your standards? You know, Ed Milet talks about the thermostat in our life and stuff like that. How do you think you can get from a place where, maybe for a long time, I've just been kind of cool with average, but you find yourself kind of falling back to who you used to be, but you don't want to? You know, I know I felt that a lot. How do you think that you could raise that and kind of become that higher degree person, like he puts it?
Yeah, I think one step away, man. I mean, it's the old rule of thumb. You know, what you surround your life around is what you'll become. And so I'm always on the quest. Again, I think it takes maturity mentally, but I'm always in the quest to surround my life around something that's better. I don't care if it's, you know, a person that's a better father, I feel like. I don't care if it's a person that's a better coach, a person that's a better, you know, speaker. I want to get around that environment because if I know I'm the best in that environment, I know I'm not growing. So I'm secure enough with myself to be like, okay, cool. I'm the least accomplished. I'm like celebrating. So I know for a fact I have to grow. And so I think that's one of the best tactics you can do is to get around people who are at where you want to be. Yeah. Simple, you know, and just have enough confidence in yourself and not self-pity to be able to take it as, oh, you know, they're better than me. But so many people never put themselves in that environment because they want to be the best. Yeah. And so for me, I want to get around environments that force me to level up, that force me to grow, that force me outside of my comfort zone. I like to call them growth environments.
Yeah, you get yourself uncomfortable. You know, like you don't want to be comfortable. If you want growth, you can't stay where you're at.
But like Trent says, so many people are insecure because they want to be the big fish, and they want to be the best.
Yeah.
When you're the best, you can't grow. You know, if you're the biggest fish in the pond, man, if you want to grow, you got to find a different pond. So perfectly said, Trent.
Right. Yeah, man. Do you ever find it ironic? You know, you say your transformation or your transparency leads to your transformation. It's funny because athletes are notoriously the opposite. You know, they're notoriously like, it's kind of all about me. I'm the best and stuff like that. Do you ever find it ironic or like, do you ever think back and like, I'm literally doing it kind of the opposite of what I expected?
Yeah, man, I do. You know, it's not easy to be transparent. You know, it's not easy to, you know, open up about things in your life. It's not easy to face certain things. You know, sometimes it's hard. Even to go back in your past, things you thought you got over, you face it, you realize you haven't truly got over it. But I just know that that's freedom, man. And I don't want to be put in a prison, whether it's be from myself, my past, people's opinions, what people think of me. I just don't want to put myself in that prison of suffering because this is just the truth. And we all know this, man. We can hide whatever from the world. We can, you know, smoke screen, whatever. But one thing you'll never hide it from is yourself. You know, you got to lay down with yourself. You'll never escape this. You know, this is the greatest battle you ever face. The battlefield is right here. So my thing is, I want to be able to free myself by being transparent, by being open, by communicating and things like that. And it's worked for me, man. Like, not from a place of like business, but it's worked for me from a place of my mental health. And I mean, that's very important for me. So.
Yeah. I'm curious, man, what are some of your daily practices? You know, I know you always protect your peace, but you know, what is behind the scenes of Trent Shelton?
Yeah, bro. I mean, without just breaking everything down, I mean, for me, I'm always curating my habits around three things. One, it's peace for me. Like, I mean, anybody follows me, you know, it's protect my peace. So my protecting my peace moment is, you know, getting on some country roads or getting out in nature. I'm a firm believer in nature. Nature heals. Nature is God's natural medicine for the soul. So I'm doing that, right? And whether that be reading, meditating, usually on my playlist, bro, people will be surprised. Like, I'm usually working out to peaceful music. Like, that's just me. It really does something for my soul. The second thing is I'm always trying to, you know, curate my habits for energy. You know, I'm a big intermittent faster. I believe in it. It's helped me. I'm always making sure, besides today, that I'm getting my workout in to be able to release those endorphins, to be able to release that dopamine to get me ready to go for the day. So I'm constructing my life around that. And the third thing is, you know, I'm constructing my habits around productivity. So I'm trying to make sure, this one has been a struggle for me just over the years. It's just that part of sticking to it. But I'm making sure I'm doing things to move the needle in my life, to make me more productive, not just for my life, but my family's life and my company's life and just my community's life. So that looks like, you know, just writing things down and checking them off. It's pretty simple, and making sure they're getting done.
Absolutely, man. It's keeping that word with yourself, you know, keeping that bond. That's how you get more confident. That's how you grow. But Trent, man, this was incredible, man. Like it was short, it was to the point, but there was so much value in this, man. I appreciate you coming on so much. I know everybody who's watching is going to get a ton of value. Just why don't you let everybody know, man, where they can find more about you?
Yeah, man, just put in Trent Shelton on social media, man. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, pretty much wherever, and I'll pop up, man. And I want to say I thank you guys for what you do. I know we've been trying to work on this for a long time, so I apologize for not getting on it earlier. So thank you, Sam. I appreciate you guys, man, and keep doing what you're doing and impacting the world in you guys' way, because that's what it's about. We need more voices like you, man.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Trent.
I appreciate it. Before we close out, man, if you could just kind of give one word of encouragement to people watching. You know, we are going through some tough times. So if someone's struggling right now, they would love a word of encouragement from you.
Absolutely, man. I'm going to break it down like this. Your perspective is everything, right? Your perspective can be your power or your prison. A prison perspective sees everything as blame and complain. A prison perspective uses the words easier said than done. And I can't stand those words because I use those words so much in my life. A power perspective says no matter how hard it may be, how impossible it may seem, I have to get it done. And I break down perspective like this, and it's so simple. How you see life will control how you feel about life. How you feel about life will control what you do with your life, and what you do with your life will control what you get from your life. So the root of your life is how you see everything, right? This year, it could be an obstacle or it can be an opportunity. You're in control of that. So make the best out of it.
Wow. I love it, man. Thank you so much, Trent. Guys,
Thank you, Trent.
if that wasn't enough, I don't know what is, but awesome, guys. Go check them out. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Trent.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you guys.
Hey guys, if you liked today's episode, do me a huge favor. Go ahead and leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel, leave me a review, and tag a few friends that you think can benefit from what we shared today. Really appreciate it. God bless.